Welcome to this Gifts of God program, a serious one-year study of the Course in Miracles. I'm so happy to have you with us today. And you know, when people join the Gifts of God program, they don't have to join on January 1st. They can join anytime, and then they're in it for a year. And, you know, they just pick up where we start. And right now, Sandra and I have been going through this year the text, which is quite a lot deeper in terms of language than the workbook. But a lot of people, when they start the course, if it's for their first time, we recommend that they start with the workbook because it's a lesson a day for 365 days. And it's a course, and the language is more practical. It's more, gives you instructions to think a certain thought for the day, and then you have some practice with that one thought. So it's more simple, and the text is a little deeper in its language, and you have to ponder it more like you would poetry or language that's a little more complex. So, but we've been going through the text this year, and we're about maybe 2/3 of the way through. We're in chapter 24. So, and we've made podcasts on every section and all the chapters, just as we've made podcasts on all the lessons. So if you're starting the course lessons and you want to listen to our podcast on that particular lesson, you can find it on our podcast station. However, you have to scroll way down, because it's like a year ago, right? So you've got to maybe scroll 3 or 4 pages to find it. I mean, if you go down low enough, you'll definitely find it. But you have to get through all the podcasts we've done on the text. And then I think we did podcasts on the teacher's manual. So you have to go through all that until you get to the workbook lessons. And then once you're in the workbook lessons, you just keep there. The numbers are sequential. So you just keep going down until you find the right number for the lesson you're working on. So that's one way of doing it. Now, some people have asked me about next year. When we start January 1st, we probably will have been finished with the text, and we will have already gone through the workbook and the teacher's manual. So I think what we're going to do is just whatever we're inspired to share on, that's what we'll share on that day. We'll kind of, open the book and there it is, and whatever that is, it'll be more spontaneous. But I think for this first couple of years, we wanted to get through the workbook lessons, and then we wanted to get through the text. So we've got that background, that backdrop from which people can refer, or to which people can refer. Like today, I was thinking about a blessing. What is a blessing? Because we've been doing these Friday blessings. We've been sending out to our Ohana, our family who breathes together, these things called Friday blessings. And it's usually about some topic that's common to people about relationships. So we've been trying to keep the Friday blessing specific to relationships, not necessarily a Course in Miracles topic, but usually the Course covers a lot on relationships. And especially recently in the text, we've been looking at what does the Course mean by a special relationship versus a holy relationship. And most of our relationships are special in that we have some kind of a motive, or we have some kind of a thing we want to get from another person, or we have some, in many cases, a deficiency we see in ourselves that we think someone else can fill. or we have something that we need and someone else can fill that need. And the Course would call that a special relationship. And it also says that those kinds of relationships are very unstable, and even uses the word treacherous. Like that's a pretty strong word. And when you really look at it, you can see how in special relationships, there's a lot of underlying expectations, a lot of sort of subtle motivations through guilt, and projecting guilt onto another person. So those special relationships really are, when you look at them closely, they are very treacherous. And they're not necessarily loving, even though we give them the context of love. Like, it could be your partner, it could be the person that you're living with, and perhaps you've been together 10 years or more, and the relationship has only been special. It's like you have your needs met by the other person and you're meeting their needs. And it's kind of like, that kind of an agreement. And it's not necessarily bad, but it's not necessarily the love that the Course in Miracles is talking about either. So what would compose a holy relationship? I think that's what I wanted to talk about today. And I wanted to talk about this thing of healing a relationship and sending a blessing. Because when you're sending the blessing, you're saying, I want this relationship to be holy. I want this relationship to be healed. I don't want a special relationship. I want to see my partner or my friend or my brother or my sister in a different light. I want to see them in the light of their true self. I want to see myself in that light, and I also want to see my brother or sister in that light. Or my parent. Many of us have had difficulties with a parent growing up. I remember in my teens, I had a very difficult time with my father. It got better as years went on till finally it got healed. But there were some very difficult years, where it was questionable. We weren't communicating very well. And so how do you heal that? And then most recently, I had a breakdown with my sister when her husband passed away a couple years ago. And Sandra and I tried to go out. She lived in another state. We tried to go out and console her, and it totally broke down and didn't work. And there was a lot of anger being expressed, and it broke down. So we haven't really communicated since then in any major kind of way. So that's another area where, how do you use something like a blessing to heal some relationship that's been broken or is not flowing? And I've been very interested in that in the last few months. And I even made this little video that I want to show you today, if I can. I'll try this screen share thing and hopefully it'll work. Called Healing a Broken Relationship. And it will show you a little thing that I'm doing right now. Some of you I've already sent it to, you've seen it before, but it's good to watch it again. It's how can we send a blessing to a person where the relationship's been cut, but that we want to heal it, and what can we do from our side, right? So that's what this video is about. And let me see if I can make it work here. Let's see here. All right. Yes. Can you all see that? I guess so, huh? All right. So here we go. Hi, Sandra Ray. What you doing? A lot of you have asked, what do you do about broken relationships, especially with family members? I have a sister and it's a totally broken down relationship. We're not communicating and we haven't for a couple of years. But at the same time, I'm committed to healing it. And she doesn't want to hear from me. So what do you do about that when you have that situation? It's a total breakdown. Sandra Ray, what do you do about it?
Keep praying.
Keep praying. Well, I have a little technique and I wanted to share it with you today. When I had the breakdown with my sister, I took a picture of us from our childhood and I put it in my clothes closet. And here it is. It's a picture of my sister and I. I'm about 3 years old and maybe she's about 5 years old. And we're building a snowman in my grandparents' backyard. So I even put a mala around it, like a blessing. So this is what I do in the morning when I put my clothes on, and what I do in the evening when I take my clothes off and put my pajamas on. I send my sister a blessing. So you can do this too. What you want to find is a picture, preferably that has yourself and the person that you're trying to heal with in the same picture. So that's what this is. And I have the added bonus. I've got a wonderful little snowman there that we've just built together, and we're happy campers. And this is the cherry tree in the back of my grandparents' yard. And my grandfather always told us about George Washington, the founding father, who cut down a cherry tree and then had to confess to his parents. He said, yes, I was the one who cut the cherry tree down, and he never lied. So that was our symbol of always telling the truth, even when we were in trouble. So that was the cherry tree in the backyard of my grandparents. So what I do with this photo is just a simple kind of ho'oponopono. I take my finger and I go 3 times around my sister's head. 1, 2, 3. And then I go down her body and I give her a blessing, right? And then I do the same with me. 1, 2, 3, and then down. I do the same for the snowman because I consider him a character in this drama. 1, 2, 3, and then down. And I bless the cherry tree. 1, 2, 3. I bless my grandparents' house. 1, 2, 3, and the neighbor's house. 1, 2, 3, and the snow. 1, 2, 3. And of course, I say a lot of Om Namah Shivayas on my mala, but not this particular one. But this mala has been charged up with a lot of Om Namah Shivayas. So I feel that it's sending also the blessing. So then after I do that and I put on my clothes, that's it for the morning. And then I wait till I change in the evening and I do the same thing again. And I do this daily. So it's a daily blessing to my sister. And one thing I did notice, that after the breakdown, about, 6 months later, she did, and I'd been doing the blessing, she sent me, or actually she sent Sandra, not to me. I'm kind of off limits, right? She sent Sandra an email saying that she met a new guy, because this was after her husband had died. She met a new guy and they were getting along very well and they were in a relationship. So I thought that was quite a positive move since her, time when my brother-in-law passed. And that's when we had the big breakdown. when we went out to see her. So I thought that was positive movement. As a result, maybe I won't take the credit for the blessing being part of that, but it did put her in a more positive vibration to get a relationship. So this is just one thing you can do when you have a relationship that is broken and you want to try to heal it. It's all from your side. You have to take the responsibility. You have to do the action. And sometimes the person doesn't want to hear from you. So to reach out and do something directly communicating to them is inappropriate. But there are plenty of things you can do behind the scenes to help the situation, to send the blessing. I don't know, maybe it's appropriate to send flowers on the birthday or, a Christmas gift or something. But just be careful, because sometimes when somebody's really charged, that's just going to plug them in even more. So that's why I do this in absentia. So I think that that's very wise to do these blessings in absentia. And the main thing is the regularity. Can you be regular with it? Can you do it every day? Can you send the blessings no matter what you're doing and not forget? So the regularity is really more important than anything else. And the pure intent of your heart. You want to heal the relationship. You want to take full responsibility for the breakdown. You don't want to be in blame. You don't want to be in, if she'd have done this or he'd have done that. No, you just want to send goodwill, send peace, send love, send your forgiveness for yourself and the situation. And I think if you do that, there's got to be a positive effect, right? So, okay, so that's it for today and the Friday blessing. And thank you for being with us. And I hope you got something out of this little video. God bless you all. Well, I had a good time making that. And it's going to go out next Friday to our mailing list. And I do think that the blessing is very important. There's a lesson in the workbook. It's 161. Give me your blessing, Holy Son of God. That's lesson 161. And then there's a little prayer, and it says, let me behold. Let's see. Give me your blessing, Holy Son of God. I would behold you with the eyes of Christ and see my perfect sinlessness in you. So this thing where we're seeing our innocence, the Course often calls innocence sinlessness, because it's trying to clear us of this belief system that organized religions had heaped upon us about being a sinner. One of the main clearance in the Course is to totally eliminate the concept of sin. It would refer to a sin as a mistake, only a mistake that can be corrected. And often the mistakes we make are because we're conditioned in certain ways by our family, by our culture, by our education. So or by our subconscious mind. So many of the mistakes we make, we can't help it, because it's like if you're using a program, right, and it has a glitch in it, when that glitch comes around, it's inevitable that glitch is going to spit something out, right? It's in the program. So we're conditioned, we're programmed in certain ways to have certain reactions. And we can't really help it. But those are just mistakes. They're not sins, and that's one of the big blessings, really, that the Course in Miracles gives us. It liberates us from this concept of sin. And it also makes it very clear that our true self, our original self, that maybe we've forgotten over the eons this original self that God created, and we've made up a self that has all these kind of wacky notions about things. It has fear, guilt, and anger. Well, God didn't create us with fear, guilt, and anger. We put that in later, right? So we're in a reparative mode. We're trying to let go. We're trying to correct. We're trying to forgive, the Course would say, these tendencies, impurities that we've accumulated over the eons, but it never calls that a sin. It just says it's a mistake, it's a misperception, it's seeing yourself through the eyes of a false self called the ego, and that's a mistake that we made, but it's not a sin. It can be corrected, and quite easily. It says it can be corrected if you're willing to apply forgiveness to all situations, if you're willing to make healing your main focus and not attack and not blame and not, projecting guilt. If you're willing to have healing, then things will clear up in yourself, in your relationships, in your life. And that's an accumulative effect. And if you can bless one person, if you can forgive one person completely, then that's transferable to everyone. So this is why the blessing is so important. And that's why I've been giving a lot of attention in my mind to that. And that's why we created this Friday blessing, where Sandra and I can share things that are meaningful to people in their relationships, that are helpful. And I think that little video is very helpful. And I'll tell you, I really enjoy doing that little thing in the closet. It's almost like it brackets my day. I start my day very early. And actually now, since I have the bike, I'm going on bike rides at 5 a.m. So I get up, I put my bike clothes on, my sweatpants and everything, and I do the blessing. Then I come home and I, take my shower, get dressed. And then in the evening, I do the blessing again. And it's just been delightful, not a chore. It's not an obligation. It should never be a chore or an obligation. And I think that's true about any spiritual practice. A spiritual practice is not penance. It's not, oh, I'm so bad and I better do this to clean myself up. No, it's a connection you have with a higher vibration, a practice that puts you in that higher vibration, and it makes you feel good. And then when you're doing it, you're feeling good. It's not an obligation. It's not a demand. And I think we have to get this right. We have to get this right. Like, doing the Course in Miracles as a spiritual practice should be a joy, not a chore. Right? You should never see it as a chore. And if it becomes that, you should stop doing it. Give it a break. Like, there were times where it was too much for me and I had to give it a break, and I didn't pick the Course up for, maybe a year, 6 months, until it became my joy. Like, I couldn't wait to do it, so you might go through a period where you don't understand it, you don't see the results happening, it doesn't seem to be working, it's a lot of time invested, and you could get fed up, and that's okay if you get fed up. Like, Sandra has this story. There was this lady, her name was Judy Scotch, And she was one of the publishers, the original publishers of the Course in Miracles. She was a good friend of Dr. Schuchman, who was the scribe, but Dr. Schuchman didn't do the work of getting it ready and doing the publishing and all that. Other people did that. Well, Judy was one of these people, right? She and her husband. And they were very instrumental in getting the book ready. This other gentleman, Kenneth Wapnick, also. And so Kenneth and Judy and Robert Scutch, they were very instrumental in getting the book published. Well, so Judy was living in Washington, D.C., actually, at the time. And Sandra had a conversation with her one day. And Sandra said, I seem to get to like lesson 220, and then I lose the books, or I get fed up and I can't seem to break through lesson 220, and I can't go any farther. And Judy said, "Oh, Sandra, I know exactly what you mean. One day I was going over the Potomac Bridge and I stopped the car and I took the course and I just threw it in the river. I was so fed up with how it was like challenging me, right?" So there are going to be those times when we're challenged, where we don't want to do it and we don't want to forgive. And we still feel like a victim, even though it tells us we're not a victim, right? But we still feel like one. So then we can read that I'm not a victim of the world I see till we're blue in the face, but we're still feeling that. And I remember there's this lesson, I feel the love of God within me now. I think it's like, I don't know, 188 or 89 or something. I feel the love of God within me now. Yeah, I think it's 189. Well, I mean, I would come to that lesson in the workbook and I'd say to myself, well, do you? And I could never really say yes, I'd say, well, what good is it doing me if I'm reading this and it says, I feel the love of God within me, and I'm not feeling it. I'm feeling something else. I'm feeling frustration, or I'm feeling like I'm not getting it, or I'm feeling mild irritation about the whole thing. So when you're really honest about your feelings, that's better than pretending. And that's actually what the Course is trying to get us in touch with. The truth about what we're actually feeling, we're actually doing at this moment. And if we're not walking on water and we're not raising the dead and we're not loving everybody, that's okay. That's okay, because that's why we're reading the Course. I often say the Course in Miracles is for those of us in hell. Because if you're in heaven, you don't need the Course in Miracles, right? It's our little personal hells we've made up that need the miracles. So every one of us has some kind of a little hell that we've made up around ourselves. And that's where we need the miracles. We don't need miracles in heaven. We need miracles in hell. And so let's just get clear. If you read the lesson and you're not feeling it, it doesn't mean the lesson's not working. It just means that it's dissolving whatever that is in you, right? Let's just say it's anger or frustration. All right, you're feeling frustration, you're feeling anger, you're feeling a sense of lack. All right, so let's just be honest. We all have felt those things. And then we read the lesson, and then the lesson gives us a different perspective, right? The lesson is actually a blessing coming at us. All right, so the blessing is coming at us, and we don't feel the blessing. It doesn't mean it's not working. It doesn't mean it's not working. Just like, the blessing of my sister, she probably doesn't have any idea that a blessing is coming her way, but she doesn't have to. But that doesn't mean it's not working. And I think it was working because her life shifted within a very short period of time. 6 months after my brother-in-law passed, she was in a new relationship. And I'll tell you, my ex-wife, it's been 16 years now, and she's not in a relationship and hasn't been. So there was something open about my sister that allowed that to happen, and something not so open and hurt about someone else that didn't allow it to happen. So how do you say that the blessing didn't have an impact? They do. And that also is the lesson that we're reading is having an impact on us, even if we're not feeling it right away. Like that lesson, I feel the love of God within me now. I can tell you, for like 10 years, I read that thing, and I was so almost pissed that I didn't feel it, the love of God. It's telling me I'm supposed to feel the love of God. Now, where is it? Why am I not? Well, now, this is like maybe 10 years later, I can read that lesson and go into ecstasy. It's just like that love of God is so close. I can put my finger on it and just go into that state. So don't give up on yourself. Don't give up. And we do say that line, until you're walking on water and raising the dead, you have something to clear. And remember this too, the miracles are for the clearing. So the miracles are in that state you're in of confusion or lack of faith. They're exactly for those periods in your life when you're feeling that. That's your little personal hell, and that's where the miracle is needed, and that's where the blessing is coming, So it's like when my sister lost her husband, she was totally devastated. It kind of came out of the blue. He wasn't that old. He was only 68, and they had planned this kind of long retirement. He hadn't even retired yet. And they had planned this retirement of travel and all this. And before it even started, he's gone. So I can imagine her grief, was so deep. She didn't want a brother around who was having a happy life, So that's okay. That's okay. So we don't really know how people are feeling deep within themselves. And it could be they're just totally devastated, So we can't judge the situation. So I didn't, but at the same time, I wanted to do something that would, from my side, send a healing, send a good vibration. And that was the way I came up with. And I don't know where I thought of that. I don't know, maybe I saw it somewhere, or maybe it just came to me. I can't remember, but I've been doing it about 1.5 years now, and I'm going to continue to do it. So that's the blessing. And then there's that lesson. We can all read that. Give me your blessing, Holy Son of God. It's lesson 161. I think we would all benefit by reading that. Maybe I can see if I can pull that up, actually. Yeah, give me your blessing, Holy Son of God. 161. Today we practice differently and take a stand against our anger, that our fears may disappear and offer room to love. I mean, isn't that what we want to do? Maybe we felt some anger, maybe we felt some hurt from a relationship, could be a sibling, could be a parent, and we're holding that hurt in ourselves. But we want to take a stand. We want to let it go. We want to make room for love now. We want to make room for love. So how do we do that? Well, we have to make this room for sending a blessing. Here is salvation in the simple words in which we practice with today's idea. Give me your blessing, Holy Son of God. See, this is the thing. We have to see everyone as a son of God. Even the people that have plugged us in, even the people that have hurt us, even the people who have done dastardly deeds, unconscious actions that were hurtful, even those people, they don't know who they are. But we have to see them with different eyes. We have to see them equally as a child of God, even with all their mistakes, right? We want to be forgiven for our mistakes, don't we? So how do you do that? Well, you forgive others for their mistakes, and then you end up being let off for your mistakes because you're giving what you're receiving, right? You're giving the forgiveness, therefore you're receiving the forgiveness. Your errors are being overlooked. You're overlooking the errors of others, and therefore those forces are overlooking your errors. So what you give, you receive. That's the principle in the Course. You receive what you give. So if you're giving forgiveness, you're receiving it for yourself. Here is the answer to temptation which can never fail: to welcome in the Christ, where fear and anger had prevailed before. Here is atonement made complete. The world passed safely by, and heaven now restored. Here is the answer of the voice for God. You know, one paragraph in the Course is a miracle. You know, like I said before, where do you need the miracles? You need the miracles in your hell. Well, what do you think fear and anger are? It says, welcome in the Christ, where fear and anger had prevailed before. Well, what do you think that is, the fear and the anger? That's your hell. And you want something different. You want to see things differently. So now you're asking in this vision of the Christ, this vision of forgiveness, of the atonement, it says. You're invoking that in. And then the Christ is like always listening to your promptings, right? So if you have a little bit of willingness and you want to forgive and you want this to be different and you would rather receive a blessing than a blame, then the Christ will be there to give you that and will help you transform the situation. And then it says, here is atonement made complete. The world of fear and anger passed safely by, and heaven now restored. Here is the answer of the voice for God. So the language in the Course is not complicated, especially the workbook. You know, people say, oh, I picked up the Course, but it was too complicated, blah, 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 blah. Well, what they really mean is, I picked up the Course and it confronted me on my stuff, and I didn't want to be confronted, so I put it down, because it's going to ask you to look at your attack thoughts, look at your grievances, look at your judgments, look at all those things that are near and dear to your ego, and it's going to ask you to give them up. Send a blessing instead of an attack, right? Anger is an attack. So if you're angry at somebody and you maintain that anger over the years and you don't get off it, it's not only going to harm that person that you're angry at, it's going to harm you, mostly you. Anger is a very low level vibration that has physiological detrimental effects on you, on your system, on your mind, and on your body. So holding those grievances over a long period of time is going to give you poor health and eventually lead you down the road to death, we would say, the unconscious death urge, right? So if you don't want to die early of a painful situation, then start forgiving people, start blessing people, start letting go, start taking responsibility. You know, I had this Ho'oponopono teacher. He was brilliant. Haleakala was his name. And he was always talking about our connections to a problem, right? We got a problem. Like, I got a problem with Adrian. All right, I don't know what to do. He just won't do what I want him to do, and it's a problem, right? Well, Haleakala would say, did you ever notice when there's a problem, you are there? Meaning you are connected to the problem. If you're having a problem and you think it's somebody else, no, the problem is in your life, right? Therefore, it's in you. And it's your responsibility to clean it up. Because if you didn't have it in you, you wouldn't be having the problem with Adrian. It's already in you, and he's just mirroring that, whatever that is, in you. So it's not even his problem, it's your problem. So we can't blame anyone for anything, really. Really. They might have done things that activated us. And indeed they did. But why? Well, there was something in me that pulled that behavior out of them to punish myself or get some kind of a lesson or whatever. So are we getting the lesson? And what is the lesson? The lesson would be, even in the midst of that ill treatment, can we forgive? Can we send a blessing? Can we see that person as our teacher, not our enemy? Do you see what I mean? It's a whole different perspective. And this is what the Course in Miracles is getting us to see. Blame is always off the track. You are never a victim. You have attracted everything. You know, there are other teachers out there, metaphysical teachers, who say the same thing. Esther Hicks says the same thing. You know, the law of attraction. You have a frequency, and that frequency will attract a like frequency. So if you have fear, guilt, and anger, you're going to attract experiences with other people who have that frequency, who mirror that back at you. So all of those experiences of unpleasant exchanges, it's your matching frequency with the other person on the other side. You're just sharing that attraction. And the Course says it in a little different language, but basically the same. It says that everything that's happened to you, you've asked for it, no matter what it is. The good stuff, the bad stuff, whatever it is. It's all something you ask for some kind of lesson in life. What's the lesson? Forgiveness. What's the result? Atonement. And what do you get from that? Well, peace and joy, right? Feeling the love of God within you. Well, you can't feel the love of God within you if you're angry, if you're frustrated, if you're afraid and anxious. So we have to work through those things, and the Course helps us to do that. Mainly fear, guilt, and anger. Everybody's got it. Some bit of fear about something. They've got some kind of guilt about something from their past. And they're angry about somebody or something that happened that didn't make them feel good. So almost everyone has those negative emotions to work through. And almost everybody has a personal lie, we've discovered, some negative thought they have about themselves. So these are just basic psychological issues that everyone has. And fortunately, the Course in Miracles is a psychological training. Jesus starts out saying, this is a mind training. Well, what's the mind? The mind is your psyche. Well, what's the training? Training the mind, which would be psychological, psyche, the logic of the mind, right? So that's what the Course is. Probably better than any psychology book you'd ever pick up in a university. Well, Dr. Schuchman was PhD psychologist at Columbia. So she would know all that language. And Jesus even told her, look, because Dr. Schuchman told Jesus in the beginning, I don't want to do this project. I got enough on my plate. Go and find a nun, she said. Go and find a nun, she told Jesus. Oh, he said, you're stubborn, aren't you? I don't need a nun because a nun would be too emotional. I need you because the problems of this age are psychological problems. They're of the mind. And you know that language better than anybody. You have a PhD in psychology, and I need that language that you have to transmit this Course in Miracles. So you are the one. That don't be telling me about a nun. I don't want a nun. I want you, and you have to do it. And she accepted it. 6 years later, having no idea it was going to take 6 years, we have the Course in Miracles because of who she was. The forces, that brought the Course in said she's like Mary, but she's not Mary. Mary, the mother of Jesus. Said she's at the same level that Mary is, Dr. Schuchman. That pure, that evolved of a soul. And then they said, well, Mary gave birth to Jesus's body. Dr. Schuchman gave birth to Jesus's mind, the mind of the Christ. That's what Dr. Schuchman gave the birth. She was the mother of the mind of the Christ, the Holy Mother, equally as important as Mary or Kuan Yin or I don't care, whatever, Mother Teresa, on the same level. And a gift for all mankind forever. The Course in Miracles will be here forever, just like any other great scripture. So, and that was her blessing to humanity. And there were plenty of times when she wanted to quit. Oh, this is taking too long, but she didn't. And we have something to give ourselves, whatever that is. You have to discover what that is, but everyone has something to give humanity. That's service, that's piece of the enlightenment, right? And we have to work through our blocks, whatever they are, and get through them as fast as we can, and then feel the love of God within us, and then have something to give that's inspiring. And we have the miracles to do it. Now, I've been studying the Course since 1985. I don't want to be discouraging, but it took me quite a few years to get to the point where I could read the lessons and I really felt they were transmitting into me and I was getting it, You don't have to take that much time. I went through it for you. It's like Tara Singh, my teacher. He spent 3 years in silence, 3 years, where he didn't see a soul, didn't talk to a person. I mean, he saw people, but he never talked. He didn't speak for 3 years. He lived in Carmel. And then he arrived at that place within himself, that stillness of the peace of God. That was his truth. That was his realization. And it took him 3 years to get there. But then when he started teaching, he could bring us to that stillness in 20 minutes. Listening to him speak, he could transmit that stillness, that silence. And in 20 minutes, we were in another dimension. So it didn't take us 3 years because he had done the work, right? And out of his compassion, he could share that. So Dr. Schuchman took 6 years to write the course, but it doesn't have to take us 6 years to get what it's saying. Because she did the work, she put the clarity in it. And if you have the ears to hear, you could read the lesson 1 or 2 times and get it. If you have the ears to hear and you read it carefully and slowly, and you give it the reverence, that's like the respect. You give it the respect and you really listen to what the words are saying, they will transform you in the moment, immediately. But you have to approach it with that kind of reverence, that kind of inner conviction, inner stillness. Because it's blessing you. It's sending the blessing. It's like, I did the blessing with my sister and the finger on the door. Well, the Course is doing the same thing to us. It's like caressing us. It's like covering us, enveloping us. My holiness envelops everything I see. Well, what do you think the Course is doing to us? It's enveloping us with holiness. You pick it up, you open it, and it's like a blessing coming at you, washing over you. That is a fact. That is what it is. And how can we not be transformed by that kind of a blessing? It's Christ himself blessing you as a fact. Maybe he's not there in the body, but he is certainly there in the mind, transmitting that truth to you and giving you the blessing. And you'll never be the same again. You will go out of your hell into your heaven, and you'll never look back and never go back. And that's the beauty of the Course in Miracles. So that's all I want to say. And give me your blessing, Holy Son of God. I behold you with the eyes of Christ and see my perfect sinlessness in you. Thank you so much for coming today. God bless you all.